Straight Outta BS podcast. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Please make sure to keep on interacting with the videos. It really helps the algorithm. And once we get into the main algorithm, then it'll start pushing my videos out to the people that have never heard of the T.T.I. and stuff like that, which is really important. We need to expand our reach and continue doing that, or else this work is kind of like pointless if we're not expanding our reach. So keep on sharing the videos, keep on liking them, comment, interact with the video in any way it helps. Thank you to my Patreon members. Thank you to the people that join the channel and support me financially. It's never expected, so it's always really appreciated from the bottom of my heart. So I want to say thank you for that. And I want to do a moment of silence for the person still struggling with intrusive thoughts or addiction or anything like that. So on the count of 3, I'm going to do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for that. And without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce my guest for the day. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went and what year.
Oh, I love this. So I am La Contessa, or Contessa Miller, and I went to Challenger's Challenge. I guess it would be Challenger Foundation, but it was in Utah, and it was in 1989. So that was the program that was actually showcased during Hell Camp. And it was actually incredible to see the difference as an adult. Like, wow, we were really hiking some pretty crazy, things. And so that was an eye opener. But it's been 35 years since I came home. And I think that what you're doing is so, so, so important. Because when I came home, there wasn't like no help or no outlook or no place where people could connect. And so this is like you say, very, very, very important. So I really, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate being part of this with you. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for being brave enough to come on here and share your story. So walk us through your childhood a little bit and like what led up to you being sent away.
So my mother was actually adopted at birth, and she basically like had her adoptive parents, and then like I was born, and then they were gonna go on a vacation, and basically my grandmother was killed holding me in the car. Which caused a lot of like delays for me. I had to like start holding things different, being taught different things. So I was brought back and forth between LA and Los Angeles, kind of like learning how to talk right. It was a really severe thing. Can you give me one second, please?
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry.
No
I could hear all that. Okay. So basically, my parents divorced, and then my mother moved us from Bakersfield to Los Angeles. And from there, then I was going to the different schools that were basically schools for, at the time, what it was called was for dyslexia. And so I had different levels of class where like they were really, really brilliant. If you were like somebody who didn't read and write, you would have like a tutor, with the beginning levels, or say you excelled at math or, whatnot. It's like they put you where you were supposed to be. And so there was an earthquake in Los Angeles. My mom finished law school. We moved back to Bakersfield. And during that whole time, my mother basically had a relationship that wasn't appropriate. And that person also thought that I was also basically on the menu. And when we came back to Bakersfield, it just started getting more aggressive and worse. And so long story short, then I went into a hospital, and then that's where it became apparent to me what he was doing was even worse than I could have ever imagined. And so then the police were brought in, and I was like questioned, and it was really, really intense. I was just 13 years old, and with my mom being adopted, we didn't really have aunts and uncles or extra family. It was just that real core, my mom, my brother, and I, and then this other person. So in order to hide me from the police and further questioning and stuff, then I was kidnapped in the middle of the night and sent to Challenger. So it was really difficult because at the time, like I said, I was still learning how to read and write, you know, and I've always been very like, I can't read and write very well, but like crystals with me and just being very empathic and sensing different parts of people were always how I've grown up. And so basically, she handed me the Sunset magazine and it said, you know, she's like, oh, you know, we're learning how to read this little thing. And it said, you know, on the ad, like, Defiant Teen, powerful 63-day wilderness program puts parents back in control. And then it's like the number and da da da. So when they kidnapped me, it was like, oh, like, oh my gosh, like that's where I'm going. And I don't think that anybody quite understands what it is. Like, you have to go through it. You really, I'm not sure, were you woken up in the middle of the night for your program? I know a lot of the troubled teen industry people are taken in the middle of the night to get to their programs. Was that your experience?
No, my parents tricked me into taking me up there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So
they drove me up to Montana and lied to me multiple times, and I was like, where are we actually going? Where are we actually going? Like, they drove from Washington to Montana, and then I was like sleeping throughout like parts of it, but I kept on waking up and we're still driving. I'm like, where the fuck are we going? What? They're like, we're going to check this school out. I was like, where is this school? Like, you said I was going to be back tomorrow and all this, but yeah, it was, I don't know. There's an argument that might be worse, but I don't compare stuff, you know, like everybody has their own experience and stuff like that. So I'm never going to say that. But for me, I think it was more fucked up for me, in my opinion. Like, I don't know how I would have felt if I had gotten kidnapped, but that would have obviously sucked too. But I feel like there's another level of betrayal that happens when your parents are bullshitting with you the whole time up there, and then they leave you there. They just fucking abandon you there. You know, and it's like, my dad looked me in the eye and said, like, it wasn't even my dad's idea, but he was like, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, and I'm sorry that we had to do this, because my mom held divorce over his head, and all this stuff. So, but I remember him looking me in the eyes and telling me that, and my mom looking me in the eyes and being like, you have to graduate. We expect you to graduate. She was totally for that. And so I just feel like that for me, there was another level of betrayal that happened because my parents tricked me into taking me up there. But I'm sure I would have been plenty traumatized if I was kidnapped too, you know?
Well, I mean, but like exactly like you're saying, that is the whole core part of it. And I think that that's what I've learned over this now 35 years later is what my mom had was that primal wound of being separated from her mom, you know? So I think it's a generational thing, like, oh, just give my kid away and other people will take care of her, or whatever her own thought process was on that. But the second time I was sent to the wilderness program, which of course I'm going ahead, but that's what she did. She was like, hey, you know, I'm going to send you this other school. And I'm like, you're sending me back to the woods, huh? And she was like, no. And I'm like, just let me pack. If you're going to send me back, let me pack. Like, I know what I want. I know what shoes are going to fit. Like, you know, that was very important because you're talking literally. And I think that is what is at the core here for both of us is mental health, surviving something, and having adults believe what we have to say is valuable. And that our time in these places means if we're putting in the work for school or whatever, that it's counted towards our education too. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, I completely agree. Okay. So let me get this straight. So growing up, there was just like some tension in the household, and then it got more intense. And then, I'm just trying to figure, was it the father that was sending, or the stepfather or something that was setting up all this stuff for you to go there? Was that who?
Basically, yes. This man was like a very high-priced, high-powerful attorney here in town.
Okay.
And yeah, and so it's kind of like, you need to shut this kid up really fast.
Okay.
And it was, it's crazy. You'd be like, oh, whoa.
Definitely don't say much more than that, especially if it's a lawyer. I totally understand. I just wanted to make sure I got it straight or whatever. What do you remember when you first got there?
And when I very first got there, it is literally like it feels like it was yesterday. You know, they took me from the house into a nice, beautiful, almost like rented Lincoln or, you know, Cadillac. We went in a private jet. And then that's when they told me, hey, you know, you're going to go through this program. It's going to be a minimum of 63 days. They told me that I would only be eating rice and oatmeal, and that at any time I would be able to have to start the program all over again. And then if I got home and my parent didn't approve of my changes, then I could be sent back at any time. So that does constantly, you know, that's like that weirdness over your head because they're expecting you to behave a specific way, act a specific way in their timeline. And it's an interesting program because that was a crazy, you're talking a 440-mile program. The elevations, I'm at 400, I think, above sea level. Getting there, it's like I couldn't even breathe. It was so high. And then, you know, of course, we did the strip search, and it was so funny because I was like, they gave me this trash bag and it was all full of clothes, and I was like, what? Like, I can't believe this. Like, when did my mom ever have the time to shop? Because she never shopped for me. So it was weird to see all these clothes and the hiking boots, and that it was like a white shirt, and just like, it was very strange. And then it's like they took my clothes and then they're like, hey, we you know, we're gonna have to strip search you, and then here's all your stuff. And then they gave me a tarp and 2 wool blankets, a seatbelt, and some string. I have all of this, actually, my little kit by me, which is hilarious when I look at it now. And they were like, pick a couple of things. You're going to be able to get your drop bag later. So, like, act like maybe what you would have for like a week or something. Okay, well, I don't know. So I'm throwing everything from the bag in there. Like, I need every pair of jeans. And so then they're like, no, that's not going to happen. It needs to be way less. Like we're talking survival, and you're going to have to carry this with brand new boots on, by the way. And like, it was just crazy because they showed me how to roll it up, and I literally couldn't stop throwing up. I was so scared and terrified that my stomach just couldn't settle. And they're like, you better watch out, because in the field they'll make you like eat it if you throw up, or you need to like really kind of almost get a hold of yourself, basically. And I remember it was a rainy night, and some local kids were in the program. One local kid and another kid had ran away that night. And so they got him, and then we're like bringing him out back to the field with me. So that first night, then you're blindfolded and headed out to the field. And again, you like, what people don't understand again with, it's like you said, that's just the beginning. That isn't even a full 24 hours. And as a mom who's had her children go into the military, it's like in those first boom, 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 24 hours, those are just very critical, you know, getting set up, you know, just really changing drastically. And so that's what this man had set up his program under, because he was in the Air Force, if I remember correctly. And that he wanted it regimented, like, we're going to break it down, we're going to pick you up. But the thing is those kids go through certain tests to be able to go through that and pass that. Like, yeah. So when I went, people weren't like, oh, let's have a physical to see if you can actually realistically hike at this elevation with little to no food, little to no water, being scared. And so yeah, we went out late at night, and eventually I got to a point where I was like, I'm actually not gonna hike at all. And you can kiss my ass. And then that's when I really noticed the different shift. You know, it was like, oh, pick up a rock. Oh, you're gonna this, you're gonna that. And then that's when I started to notice that was, oh my gosh, where am I at? And that's where it just got really scary. And then it was like, what do you do? Where do you go? You know, nobody's there. And you think to yourself, back like you were mentioning, why would my parent do this to me? Was it really that bad? You
Yeah.
know? And so we're given a number, I believe, in the first program, and we would basically be kind of told to count off, and you know what I mean? Like we weren't really a name. And I know we were all different ages too. I mean, I was 13, and then I think it jumped to like you, 16, 17, and then one of the kids in the group was actually turned 18 during the program. And they were like, well, maybe we'll give you a ride into town. You sure you don't want to finish the program kind of thing? So it also, I think, in that first week of primitive was crazy because we were hiking at such high elevations. We were going in and out of certain terrain. And so it's like there was water in our boots, you know, like a lot of us got, of course, new shoes, blisters. And there wasn't really first aid that was given to us. It was more like, here, let's throw some tea tree oil on you, or we're just going to cut the skin off or whatever. And like now, of course, you know, between now and then, it's like, why weren't we given medical attention? Why wasn't that valuable and important? Were you given medical attention, like when you went to your program? Like, was it ever dentists or eyes or any type of?
I mean, yeah, you could go if there was like a actual like real need for you to be there. Like if you had to be at a doctor or whatnot, they would let you go, but your parents had to pay for all that, and then you'd be transported just like you know, pretty much like you know, against your will in a van to the place, and they'd like keep an eye on you all the time, and that whole thing, like you would be originally transported to a program. It'd be the same kind of thing, but you'd go there, you'd come back, at least the place that I went to, and you'd have like at least two staff members, and then like two junior staff, which is like the upper levels, like because we had like levels 1 through 6. So once you got onto level 4, you essentially became cops. You like policed all the lower levels and stuff, and got more privileges and stuff. You had to do that to get out of the program. If you didn't do it, then they would drop you and be like, you're not participating. But so there'd be two junior staff, and there'd be two staff members at least in the van, and then they'd have like 1 or 2, maybe 3 people that they transport at a time. But yeah, you'd be able to see an actual doctor off facility if there was a real dire need that you had to be seen for. But usually they had a doctor on the facility that I don't even know if it was an actual doctor.
Yeah, and see, that's important, right? Because it's like you know, if you're in a regular household and you have a kid, and it's like at any moment, you know, anybody can say, hey, you're neglecting, or you're not taking care of your kid, or you're not this, and this. And it's like, so then why then would these programs be allowed to do that? Especially then over the state lines too, in your case, going over state lines, just like with me. So I think that that's one of the important things is like, are the children today being able to have better, like better food, better water sanitation, really making sure that we are healthy and stuff. Those are my, you know, that's what keeps me up at night. You know, how do you do that? I'm not a big voice, but it's definitely something that's like, hey, this is concerning, this happens. And when you constantly are like, hey, this is happening, people are like, no way, that doesn't happen. That people
You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a conspiracy theorist. That's what they say.
Right? And it's crazy. It's like, no, actually, no, really. And then also, I think that that's another big thing too, is that also coming back from the programs, and maybe I've already said this, like nobody as a therapist ever knew what I went through, or, you know, like you say, one wasn't worse than the other. It was our own holy shit survival moment. And I feel like we're still continuing to live through these moments. So to me, I think that that's what's the most important. If I had like a teenager today and I was like, hey, listen, you know, maybe you're having communication problems or maybe something's going on. How do we fix that without damaging them? And you know what I mean? Because usually when something happens to somebody, it goes down 7 generations, you know? So it's like, how far does this ripple really go? You know? And then there are times as a parent where I was even like, oh my goodness, am I supposed to do that to my children too? You know? Is that a wise choice? So I was very hard on them. I definitely did bring them out to the woods a lot. But it's because I felt safe there. So in that first week, back to that question that you were asking, that first week, there was no food for 3 days. And then we were given like a can of peaches. It was like this big. I hope I don't fall. Anyways, they gave us a can of peaches after 3 days. And they're like, go ahead, try to open it. And you're starved. It's been 3 days. You haven't eaten anything. None of us, like, we're freaking out. And then they'll like mess with you. Okay, we'll open it for you. And then you're like, well, where's a fork or a spoon or what do we eat with? And, you know, obviously you don't want to be so hungry, but in reality you are, that you would eat with your hands. But they're like, no, get a stick. And so we had to like be very primitive, get a stick, use a rock to shape it. We were not allowed any fire really until like those first couple of days, it was like, you're not getting anything. So then we were given the peaches, and then that was our can to cook with for the rest of the program. So if you dinged it or lost it, that's not good for you. Like, that's what you're cooking out of. Were you guys prepared regular meals each day, or how was the meal situation for you?
So I went to a wilderness program that was attached to the program I went to. But the program, the Spring Creek, wasn't a wilderness program, but there was like a optional wilderness thing. So to answer your question, I guess I would say when we were on wilderness, we would essentially like go to like a base camp, and then we'd stock up for like a fucking, like, I think it was like at least a week, maybe 2 weeks worth of food. And you'd have to like ration all the food. Like you'd get a certain amount of food. You get like a fucking like 2 pounds of fucking like oatmeal and like fucking some like a fucking thing of peanut butter or two. And then you'd get like just random stuff that they would be small, and like tuna, stuff like that. And then you'd have to pack that up. And then if you had more, like you could take more food, but it'd be heavier for you. So you'd be
just so people kind of get an idea. It's like, here's your rice. What did you get? Oatmeal? Yep, oatmeal, flour, probably, right?
Yep.
And then on top of that, your water, and what else was in your bag?
Yeah, we had peanut butter. We had saltines, and at the one I went to, saltines and peanut butter. A lot of people ate that, but you'd only get like one or two. I think it was like 2 sleeves of the saltine crackers. Like that's not even that many crackers. But I used to remember like in wilderness.
Ration.
Yeah.
Ration. Yeah. It's crazy because. And that's just the craziest part too, is just like we're saying too, is like some kids do not even make it out of that phase, the first beginning, or being able to like even go at night. And that's the craziest part, is it's like, why are we putting each other in these situations that, like, you know, even the sheriff's departments and search and rescue were like, hey, that's kind of a little intense, guys.
Yeah, especially like in a place like Montana, like where we were in Montana, like there's so many fucking animals out there. Like they would straight up tell us, like, if you don't tie up your food in a tree, like you're going to attract bears to the fucking campsite. And like, there's going to be bears all over here, and we're probably going to all get mauled. So like they'd be for real. Like I didn't learn how to like tie my bag properly for the longest time. And I kept on freaking out. I was like, I'm going to get eaten by a bear, dude.
And that's the fear. That is the craziest thing. What people don't understand is because you're literally, I have a scar on my eye right here from having the food up in the tree. And so I went like this to get it down, and I turned because I heard did you guys have kangaroo rats? They were like, they would go through the camp and steal our food all the time. And I remember turning, Oh, it cut up my eye. It was so disgusting. It was disgusting.
Did you
But
guys
like you said, huh?
go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh, I was gonna say, but like you say, it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, you don't want the other animals to eat your food, like, because that's all your food. Nobody's giving you more food.
Yeah, for sure. Did you guys have different people leading? Like, did you have to learn how to use a compass and like have different people lead the group? And then it like, because for us, like we had a different person lead the group every day, and the fucking staff member would choose that person, and it would be completely random. And so when I got chosen, like I literally didn't like I got us lost. The entire group lost, and everybody was fucking infuriated with me. Everybody hated me for that.
I
Like,
love
but they'd
it.
be like, oh, looks like you
Yes.
fucked up. You should have fucking researched how to do it. So now we're lost. Now we're gonna have to go even farther to get to base camp, and it's all your fault.
And
Yeah.
which is probably like, again, back to the gaslighting that you experienced with your parents, because in reality, I'm pretty sure we were always kind of almost going around in circles
Yeah.
in some things. And now I didn't understand that too until like I later on in life was a search and rescue diver and became a tracker. And it's so funny when you go through that kind of training, and it's like, yeah, usually people, they get lost and they're like you say, just a little bit away from base camp. Like they're not really that far. So yeah, crazy. But also I think too is what's interesting is like when you're like with you and I, we have with the troubled teen industry, it's like we have almost like a different language. Okay, base camp, we had this drop off, or we had solo, or whatever. And so a lot of us understand that, like, oh, okay, but that's what I would like the bigger picture for more people to understand that. Like, oh, whoa, we don't have like necessarily like a universal, hey, we're, survivors of this. Like, there's not really um, you know what I mean? Like a universal code or like a imprint or whatever. It's like, and so for us to be able to connect with each other now on the internet and like this, being able to do interviews, I think that that's super important. When I was out in the field, I got a box camera, which I don't know. Yeah, that's aging me. I'm 49, but that was literally just a plastic camera. And then it was like the film, and then we'd mail it back home. And literally we would be writing like, we're starving, we're dying, come get us. And then like, and they would tell our parents, they're such mass manipulators, like,
Yep.
don't believe anything they have to say. And I think that again, you're taking away our voice. You don't even know us. You have no idea what's happening in our home. You have no idea like what's really going on. And of course, back to me being in this special school with dyslexia, they did expect me to do a workbook, hike, have little sleep, try to understand, you know what I mean? And I'm young. I'm very young. And they're unfortunately doing that to a lot younger and younger children. And that's sad to me,
Yeah.
is where's the line to say, hey, wait a second. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people that, whoa. What do we do with you? Kind of whoa. But um, like you, that first 3 weeks was one section called primitive, and then from there, then we went and we changed staff members. And then we hiked. We got a little bit of fresh food. That time we ended up getting like a drop bag, so we were able to like change out our clothes that were in that big trash bag when we first got there. And man, it was crazy because we did like, get the little bit of peanut butter. We did get a little apple. I think maybe a full apple. And I have never eaten an entire apple where you're like, I even want to eat the seeds. I'm that hungry. It
Yeah.
was crazy. It was so crazy. And I would sit there every day and I would think, my mother's dog is like eating better than I am right now. I know that about her. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so I think that, you know what I mean? It's the whole thing. Like, what is it that you want to instill in a human being? So TP camp, I think, was the second 3 weeks. And that's where we had the food, had the changeover of staff. We hiked to these teepees, and it was it was a couple, two people, husband and wife, Golden Eagle, and Graybeard. Yeah, Gray Wolf was one of the head staff. And so everybody even had Indian names. We had no idea what our staff's name really was. So even that is it just seems kind of weird. So now we're getting into teepee camp. That's when we started doing skills, really working on bow drill fires, which is the 2 sticks with a rock. Of course, I know you know. Flint and steel. We did things like pottery. We did deer brain tan. You know what I mean? Brain tanning a deer hide.
Oh, tanning a deer hide?
Yeah. Yeah, and so we even shaved off all the fur, put it in the brains. It was disgusting, especially we didn't even have soap. So it was kind of weird that we're just dirty and we're smishing around, and then let's go back to camp and wash our cans out with rocks and then cook our half mushy, rice or oatmeal. It was just a weird way of living. But by that point, I think it started to become very natural, and almost okay, wait a second, me walking to the bathroom and singing because they don't know if I've run away just became natural, and it just was strange, to be at night, in order to kind of keep us basically, for lack of a better word, herded in towards the fire, they would start talking about skinny runners and shapeshifters and how they would come out and they would take us and really crazy stories that you're out in the middle of that. And the sky is so huge and you hear the coyotes and the other animals and you're literally oh, because it could be very well true, and I really wanted to stay by the fire just so I didn't find out for my own self.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I remember the stories too. How many people were there when the first program, when you got there? If you had to estimate, how many people were there?
It was quite a bit. Steve had a really good operation going. He was doing really well. And the thing is the tuition was a specific amount, but my mother was told, hey, why don't you talk to this mom over here or this mom over there, and if they put their kid through the program, we'll actually discount your tuition. Yeah. So it was actually better in these parents' best interest for their wallet to get other kids to get signed up. So there was constantly kids. And then it wasn't just kids that were just getting there. It was constantly returners too. And then it would always be some kind of trick oh, this kid went to run in and that kid's sibling was there and came to run in and now that kid's in the program. And so it gets kind of crazy because you say, even though they're siblings or whatever and possibly are going through the same program, their experiences are going to be their own intense because you say, this is something to really carve you down into something that it's supposed to be what do you want me to be? Yeah. Yeah. What do you want me to do today? You want me to make a fire with 2 sticks? I will do that. You want me to go without toilet paper? I will have to do that. You want me to, carry this backpack that's wait, I mean, I'm 4'10", so that backpack was it was really big. So, but also it did, I can't say, oh, it shaped me into who I am. I think I always at the core was how and who I am. And so it is kind of one of those, it just depends on the day how I really feel about that. Sometimes I'm really angry and I just sit with it. And then some days I'm oh, that's kind of cool. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Wow. So I'm really proud of, I've been saying to you before, I'm really proud of us being at this level of having the internet and having this kind of, you say, organic discussions about what really went on. Because during teepee camp, then they're pack your stuff. You're now going to go on solo. Did you do that? Where it was you go, okay. So that was crazy. You're oh, you can't go beyond this tree or that bush or this area. And yeah. And then, And then it's crazy because now you're even more by yourself. And so how, it's the coping mechanism. And again, you say, what you could have had, there's snakes around, there's other animals around.
Yeah. No, it was a crazy, it was a crazy experience. It was a crazy experience.
Tell me more about your solo. Did you have to then make your own food with a bow drill fire? Did you have to like do a flint and steel? Were you like, did you also, last question, because I like throwing them at you. Did you guys make ash cakes out of the flour?
I don't think we made ash cakes. And on my solo, I was just fucking freaked out because I'm like, I believe in paranormal shit and all sorts
No,
of
same. I
shit.
went to school
And
for
then
it. No,
fucking,
yeah.
and then they were like, no, you need to be hella far apart from people. And I was just like telling my friends in the fucking thing, I was like, can you just like camp like not near me, but just like within like, I can like yell if fucking something happens or something.
Yeah.
I had like a few people on the side of me, but that was like a little like a mile apart or something. But it was fucking crazy. We had to go off, and I ended up I didn't really have to use fucking a fire much because I don't think you were allowed to do fires on a solo because they didn't trust us enough to like, make fires on solo and burn the forest down or something like that. So
Right?
I
They're
think
like,
you had to. I think you had to live off of like peanut butter and crackers or something like that. Because I remember myself eating a lot of peanut butter and crackers. So.
and tell me those lizards didn't look good. Oh my gosh. We'd be like, oh, we had all these traps and we'd be like, well, we hope we can get like a lizard or a snake. But yeah, that's like another thing where you're like, humans need to be connected and next to each other and touch and, you know, words of affirmation. That's like the, you know, those are our forms of like love language, you know?
Yeah.
And so when you're constantly being like, sorry, you gotta be separated. Hey, you gotta, again, like you say, I believe in the paranormal. I do get where I'm like, whoa, what's going on? What's this? What's that? What am I feeling and sensing? And so it is really weird because the desert does really talk to you. You know, it really is really, really alive. So, you know, it's not something to take like very lightly. And I think that a lot of the parents are like, oh, look at these rates. They told me this is going to be perfect for my kid. Like, it's no big deal. I'll just pay this little price and it's going to be fine. Well, what do they expect if they've never ever, have they ever gone hiking? Have they ever gone, you know, like you, being into a school? Were they ever away for school? So I think that those are things that I feel could be important of a program being like, who checks on the parents? Just saying.
Yeah. No, that for sure. You need to check on the parents too. I think that's important. Um, okay. How long were you there? First time.
The first time I believe it was 109 days. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think it was even would even be possible to graduate in 63 or however many days they say you could? Do you think that's even possible?
Yes, I think that, because the way that the, staff push the kids, like if you're sitting, no, you will be dragged until you're ready to go. And I get it because it's like, dude, Utah had flash floods. Utah has like crazy weather. If you're low and that rain is coming in, you're getting that flash flood. Everybody's gonna die. You got to get up. You know, you got to be up higher. I mean, so obviously I didn't know that. You know, also a lot of the staff members were very, very young. You know, and it's like crazy because you know you want to like have that camaraderie with them, and but then it's like when it's time to leave, it's like, oh my gosh, that's the only family I know now. And you know what I mean? So it's like once you come home from solo, that's then when we had our naming ceremony, and then they changed our names to Indian names. So that's when I became like Laughing Fox. And that was like, it just felt very natural then, you know, to be walking around with like leather pants and having ghost beads on and, you know, being just a little bit more nature, you
Yeah.
know. And then after that, 3 weeks after we had our naming ceremony, then we had another changeover. So another change of staff. And then we were actually given an old, um, it was a hand cart, like a Pioneer hand cart. So we would push it. It was big. And they let us have communal cooking. So they, instead of having our backpacks, that all got put in the hand cart, and then they gave us like bins of different things and a Dutch oven to be able to cook with, and we pushed that all the way to Lake Powell. And that's where then I had my 14th birthday, which was kind of cool to be like, oh, I'm at Lake Powell, like I'm 14. But then that was like crazy because that was the day that like we went to go get firewood, and I'm like, I've already gone that way. I'm gonna go this way. And then that was when I heard the rattlesnake, but I didn't like realize, oh, like, oh my gosh, like that's a rattlesnake. Like I was already gone. And it had basically bit into my boot. And so as I was running, it was like flipping all over the place. And so it was kind of cool because everybody came over with their knives and they're like chopping it up, and we got to eat it for dinner. And so it was just kind of funny how you're like, it's the little things, and it was that little bit of food, even though we were communal cooking, that was like, we're still that hungry. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then with handcarts, then we just went to Lake Powell, then went on another solo, and then those kids would then, certain kids would then be able to graduate. And then that's when they would tell, well, actually at any moment they could tell a kid that they would start all over again. It just depended. And then that's when they're like, well, you've made a change, but not quick enough, so you have to start all over again. And I was like, okay. Like, okay. I didn't really think that I wanted to go home ever once I was out there. It just kind of never like, yeah, it never really was like something that I ever wanted to leave. But funny enough, I stayed long enough, did another solo, and then funny enough, like I said, my mom was adopted. I actually came home on her birthday. So it was like such a, oh my gosh, happy birthday, mom. Like just such a moment to like connect back with her. And she had another friend that had a Learjet. And so we flew back home. And I think within maybe a couple of hours, she's like, I can send you back whenever. Don't talk back to me. Don't da da da. And I didn't realize it wasn't her rules that were so weird coming home. It was like walls and like being in cars that really kind of changed for me. Did you have that experience?
What do you mean? What do you mean with the walls?
Because we were like, out, like everybody's out and there's like really no walls and it's for so long. Like coming inside to the house or in a car, it was like
feeling
very claustrophobic.
Oh, okay, claustrophobic. Yeah. I mean, I have claustrophobia in general, so I've always kind of dealt with that. But I can see how that would be after the program. I kind of just stay in my house as it is. But I think it probably increased because of the program. Probably, yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
Did they put you in any solitary confinement, or were you like, besides the solo in your in the wilderness part, what other like, on your own part were you dealing with? Because you were saying 22 months you were in your programs.
Yeah, 22 months at Spring Creek Lodge, and then I spent like a couple months on the wilderness thing of my time there. So I was only in the wilderness thing for like a couple months, and that was like something.
That's not only. That's a big chunk. And
yeah,
especially when you're a kid, 22 months, that's a huge chunk. Like what?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, after a while, you just stop. Time just like goes by fast because every single day is the same, and fucking you do the same shit. But in solitary confinement in the program, my first year I rebelled for like my first year until they finally was just like, okay, well, you can keep on fucking around. They didn't swear obviously, but they're like, you can keep on messing around and all this. We're just going to send you to Jamaica where they don't have child protection laws, and we're not even gonna, your parents already signed their way their rights, so we're just going to send you
really there. That's what I
and they're like, yeah, and then they're like, you either act up, you either like start working the program, or we're sending you there. And if you want to act up there, they'll just break your arm, and then there won't be any repercussions. So they essentially scared the shit out of me. But yeah, my first year, I was every single day I was getting removed, and every single day I was like level 1 0 points, and I'd spend my first year in between solitary confinement and this place called study hall, where you pretty much have to like sit up on a chair. And like, you'd have to like write sentences, like you have to write a couple thousand sentences. Like if you fucking broke a rule and you said like, if you didn't first word out of your mouth wasn't self-correct, then you'd have to write 1,000 words or whatever. And then if you stop corrected, it's like 3,000. And then depending on the consequence, like you could get up to like 100,000 or some shit. You just have to keep on writing the same fucking word over and over again, front and back, all day long, for multiple days, just same fucking shit over and over again.
And then what happened to these pieces of paper?
They would just throw them away. They just throw them away at the end of the day. You're pointless. You just that and listening to these tapes, like these self-help tapes or whatever. And you'd have to like sit up straight on the chair and like look straight in front of you and stuff like that. And like, yeah, it was fucked up. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in solitary confinement, but we only had that one solo thing on Wilderness.
So do you notice that people find that you're perfectly comfortable being by yourself?
Yeah, I mean,
like,
I don't.
How can you do that?
Yeah,
I think that's what I like the most about it, because I'm like, I'm comfortable being by myself because of the solo time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that, but it's weird all at the same time. Like, maybe I'm not supposed to be that okay with that.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, you gotta laugh it off, because if you don't, it's almost like, why was that pressed upon you? You know? Did you break any law? Were you like, doing anything? Like, I think that that's what's crazy, is that most people, if they break the law, like they at least go in front of a judge and kind of have like a specific, like, okay, like you say, this is what you do, or this is what you did, or whatever. However, some judges do send kids to the programs as well too. So I shouldn't really say that, that.
Yeah,
but I guess I just think
also in jail they get more. Fucking prisoners get more rights than fucking children do. How the fuck is that possible? Like, we complain about people and the death penalty and like solitary confinement and fucking waterboarding and torture and all this stuff happening in our prisons, but it's just like, where are the complaints for our children that this is happening as we speak to? Like, what? Like,
well, because people,
prisoners that have committed crimes.
Yeah, people don't want to believe that this happened. Is what I think. And I think that, like, it was huge to see Paris Hilton come out and be like, hey, this is what happened to me. And it's still like, people are still like, no way that would happen. So I do have questions, like, for her mom. Like, now that she's a mother, would you want to send one of your grandkids there? Because from what it sounded like, why she was sent is pretty much what's made her famous now. So, with me, it was like I was having the, it's like I try to be very, polite with my words. Having that other stuff happen at home, but then it's like I still was like, just like you say, a kid just struggles when they're a teenager. Where do you fit in? What do you like? Like, how do you even know yourself? So, like, you're saying that they're saying you need to know this specific right answer immediately. How the fuck would you know what's the right answer if you're like, And I think that that's what's terrifying me is, how do you like get out of that? How did you kind of, do you write now that, like, or is that something where you're like, I don't even want to write or journal because of that kind of treatment?
Like, are you asking how I cope nowadays?
Yeah.
A lot of the time I don't cope. A lot of the time I'm fucking struggling. Like, I put on the face like I'm okay, but really I'm struggling a lot. Like all the time. Or a lot of the time. But I write music, I write poetry, I do this, and fucking I play with my cat, play video games, stuff like that. Yeah. I just do stuff that I smoke weed. I'm very invested in like cannabis. Like, I'm a fucking cannabis nerd, and I like nerd out about like every single thing about cannabis. I'm like actually in college right now for cannabis chemistry. So
love it. Perfect.
So I do college. I just try and keep myself busy, because when I'm not busy and I'm just like every morning when I wake up, I'm just like, it's hard to even get out of bed, because that initial just like, okay, I'm going to actually start my day now. Because I wake up and I start thinking about shit. And I think part of that too is the first thing I do is I go on Facebook, and then I scroll and fucking the death scroll on Facebook. And I start,
Oh, I get it. No, I get it. I get it, because it's almost like crazy, because it's like if we don't like go on Facebook, or if we're not like on TikTok or scrolling or whatever, for me, like you say, I struggle every single day. You know, every single day it's a struggle to be like, am I okay? Like, was it okay that I went through that? Like, is it okay that I'm in no contact with my mother? My father passed away from Alzheimer's. He never was really ever part of the wilderness program stuff. So I think it's been like 10, 15 years since I've talked with my mom, you know? And it's been crazy because it's like, it's a mutual thing. Like, she doesn't want to hear from me. I don't want to hear from her, you know? And I spent so much of my life being like, oh, please like me. Please let me be this good kid. I went through this program. I went through this program twice. I went, you know, and then after that, she was like getting really drunk. And it's basically like a kind of, the cat dropped something in the house and she's like, you need to vacuum that. So I got the vacuum and I bumped her foot. Was I being aggressive? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But then that's when she's like, okay, I'm calling juvenile hall. And I was like, I don't want to be with you anymore. Like, I've been telling you this. Like, why do we keep doing this? And so it is difficult to say, no, actually, as a human being, I'm worth more than you continuously sending me to these programs. So I don't know if mine would have been different, like you at 16, you know, because like I was there just quite a few more years, but I had my 16th birthday in juvenile hall. And that's when I told the judge, I'm like, don't ever take me or send me back home to her again. And so I don't know how I could have been emancipated if she already gave me up to the wilderness programs before. Like, what do they do? Sign you back over? When does that happen?
Yeah, that's kind of a, I'm not really sure how that, you know, I'd have to look more into like the specifics on that. But that doesn't really make sense because they gave up their rights to the program. So do they, and especially if you're adopted. I'm adopted too, but that I've never thought about that. How the fuck did they give them back the rights?
Right?
Because they take all of them away.
And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker too. So, and all this has happened. The funniest thing is I've got my DNA stuff, and I love this because at one point, my mom had actually been told a whole nother family that she belonged to them. That she is like, you are my half sister, you are my half brother, and these people believed it. And I was like, you know, I don't know about that. She mentioned meeting her mom before, and the woman saying, you know, I gave you up for adoption. Like, sorry.
Yeah.
She still told this other family that. I get my DNA stuff done, and I find out, obviously, I belong to the first family. And my mom literally sits there. I called the first people, and I said, hey, are you guys on the DNA stuff? And they were like, we all took the test. And I was like, no way. And they're like, every single one of us took the test. I'm like, okay, where are you? I'm logging in. They're like, where are you? We're logging in. Oh, we don't match. Interesting. So then my mom was like, oh, she's lying. She's lying. Okay, well, then take the test. You know what I mean? Like, then, so
yeah.
Then that's when I realized that some people can have a life where they can disillusion so much to fit their narrative, and that's really scary. So then I learned from then, I was like trying to find her birth certificate, and I was like, her name, the specific year, the specific date, right? Interestingly enough, if you try that, they will say that person doesn't exist, right? But if you go back to the mother's maiden name and you go to the records and say, baby, whatever the mother's maiden name was, and then that date of birth, it will come back as if whoever adopted that person was the live birth of that child. Like, who's on your birth certificate? Is it your parents that, you know, adopted you?
I'd have to look. I know it's my real parents. It's my blood parents. I was given up for adoption, like literally, like I was born, and then in the emergency room they gave me to the other parents. Like, it was an arranged adoption thing. So on my birth certificate, it's my real parents. Or my dad ran away after I was born. because he was like, I don't want to deal with that. But my mom, my real mom, was on there.
Yeah. So imagine like you have been like this. Sometimes it's a generational thing where you're just like, oh my gosh, where do I fit in? What do I look like? And that's what a lot of people, when you're going through adoption, no matter what the generation is, what people don't understand is it's like, and I know this is way off the topic, but a lot of kids that have been adopted or next generation down are in these programs. And I think that that's huge. Like, whoa, wait a second. You can't just like, okay, I want this kid. Wait, they're not acting how I need them to act. Like, here, you guys fix them, you know? And I think that that's interesting. It's like, listen, that child is born. They're not seeing the faces that would be similar to theirs, or hearing voices or mannerisms, even food that they should be used to. So I think that that was a lot of years that I had to kind of just learn that sometimes, you know, it's like we might not be messed up. Sometimes it can be like our parents too. That's like, obviously they're probably trying to do their best, but it's like, so are we, I think. And so, yeah, the fear of, you know, the adoption stuff is crazy because, again, like, yeah, how do you know what's the right thing to do if it's a different generational thing from what you would be biologically, I guess.
Yeah, and how do you how do you even know what genetic trauma you've inherited if you don't even know who your parents are? Because trauma passes through genetics. It's called transgenerational epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely travels. Like they've actually studied this with some serial killers, that some serial killers, like it's actually like passed down in their genetics, like from their parents or from their grandparents who had like a homicidal urge or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it passes down through the genetics.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's why some serial killers, like they just start up out of nowhere. Like they start doing shit out of nowhere because it's in their genetics just already. And something just needed to awaken that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of fucking snap from there. Like not all serial killers, but some serial killers, it has been traced to their genetics. So it's
But,
very,
and that's, yeah, and that's the funniest thing too, is it's like what's natural to us and what would happen naturally. And that's the funniest thing, is by doing the DNA and having it out there and then like meeting my biological family, it's funny because like you say, like they all kind of have the same similarities. And you know, that I'm like, that's hilarious. Oh my gosh, I would have normally done that. That's kind of interesting. Or, you know, just kind of like you say, certain things. And, you know, just like any family, if they're like surgeons in a family, they're all going to be surgeons. Like if they're psychics, they're going to be psychics. So if they have certain genetic codes, yeah, it's going to start kicking in when it's supposed to be kicking in. But again, that's one of those things where you're like, imagine now, think about that in that crazy aspect. Like, okay, say that serial killer is like a young teenager and he's like in the wilderness program. You're teaching him essentially.
yeah.
How to hide, how to do, you know what I mean? Like what, you know? And now it's like, well, who's safe? Are the students safe? Is the staff safe? Like, interesting, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Or are
obviously
you,
I'm a fear girl. So being like, oh my God, the worst thing could happen. And that's kind of, I need to stop doing that. But yeah. So I think that that's one of the things that I would like to see happen. You know, obviously I would like to see more people talk positively about adoption and having more positive stuff through adoption. That it's like, it can be good. It can be a really good experience, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, and like incorporating that in, how is a teenager? How would they normally behave? Kids are supposed to misbehave when they're teenagers. So for these programs to be like, your kid's gonna like misbehave, that's an out of control teenager. They're a fucking teenager. They're supposed to, you know, stay up late or try to sneak out or whatever. Obviously, like you say, there can also be an extreme of somebody. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you were there the first time, got sent home, and then what led up to you being sent back? And did you go to the same place the second time?
No, Kristen Chase had crossed over while in her first week, I believe, of being in the program of Challenger, and that shut it down. I believe that some of the people might have been, I don't know if they were arrested. I think that they might have been charged with neglect and maybe child abuse, but nobody really was convicted.
Imagine that.
Yeah. I mean, and like you say, for that like moment of silence, it's like, I know that hike that she was on. Like, I know where she was at. Like, I was there. So many of us were there. It was hot. You know, they basically just fried her brain. Oh, you don't need water? You know, what do you mean she doesn't need water? It was like 100 and something degrees outside. Give the lady some water. Nope. Oh, okay, she's dead. You know, and so one of the friends that, this might be getting confusing, but one of the girls that my mother had told her mother, hey, send her. She was out in the program when Kristen died, and she remembers hearing like, she's unresponsive, get, you know, EMT here, get blah, blah, blah. And so she lives with that, like survivor's guilt. And, you know, we don't talk about that either. That again, you know, we're kids and we're going through a lot. And even though I wasn't there when Kristen was there, it's like, I will always feel like, you know, if she needs a voice or whatever, like, please use mine or whatever. Like, no kid should be kidnapped and like taken against their will and then been like, okay, you're not going to be, like you say, you're not going to get normal things. And like you say, even prisoners get, you know, taken care of better. What did we do as kids? Isn't it like the Geneva Convention that like even prisoners have rights?
Yeah.
So why isn't anybody doing that? So once Kristen had crossed, or yeah, she had crossed over, they closed the facility. I believe Sequoia Wilderness Program opened up, and then North Face opened up. And North Face is where Aaron Bacon died at. And so it was basically like, you know, they had like kids die like super fast. So like, I get it, you know, people cross over, but it was unnecessary. With Aaron Bacon, he had been unable to like move and hike. And I don't know him personally, but I've read that when his mother went to look at him in the coroner, it was like he looked as if he had been in like a concentration camp. Like he was so skinny, and he literally, there was just bruises everywhere. His intestines had burst. You know, inside he was very sick, and they put him in the back of a truck and were going to start him all over again. Those kids like dying, and he's like hearing, you're a mass manipulator. And he is, like you say, he needed medical attention. So there's nobody even saying, oh, hey, maybe da-da-da. So interestingly enough, those same two programs, same person in charge, and didn't go to jail. So yeah. So then after that happened, I was then sent to Sequoia. I did everything I could to stay. Like, and if it was solo, I broke solo. If it was being a smartass, I had no desire to go back home. And they finally were like, this is the end of the program. You have to go home. So I did do the second time in 63 days. And they're like, no, you have to go home. And I'm like, can't you give me a job here? Like, I don't want to go home. Because why go home if you keep changing and you're going through this and you're doing things? I'm getting further behind in school. None of it counts. My mom still had her own issues going on. So it's like, where was I better off? And that's also a scary thing too. How many kids are better off in the wilderness programs than they were at home? Because that's the only part that I live with, that at least there, even though all that stuff was bad, it was still not as bad as at home, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of a weird, like you say, how do you compartmentalize that, I guess is a good word.
Yeah, that should never be the situation where the better option is a place like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And it was weird too, because the second time around when they woke me up, it was like the same person that woke me up the first time. So like, you know how you know voices and you're just like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, come on. And it was crazy because my mom had told me, get out of the house, leave. You can't take anything I've ever bought you. And I was like 15 years old. Like I was 15. And she's like, you can't take anything. Like I bought all your stuff. And so I'm like, okay, fine. And I left to my friend's house. And then she's like, well, you have to come back. You ran away. You told me to leave. And I was like, I will come back if you promise I'm not going to a wilderness program. And she goes, I'm going to send you to a school in Colorado. And I was like, okay, cool, bet. Okay, I'll come back. But I'm like, but really, be honest. If, again, like I said at the beginning, like, let me know, I'll pack. And she was like, no, no, no. So it is interesting to also come to the understanding as an adult too that you know, sometimes parents are just liars, you know, like
No, they are.
yeah. And I don't think that she wanted to be a mom, and so it's all good, you know, like whatever. But I don't think I will ever have a day like you know, where I'm not waking up being like, holy crap, how did that happen? Okay, let me busy myself over here or over there. But then also still take the time to be like, I want there to still be awareness of what's going on, understanding. Hopefully, the kids come home nowadays that they not just get like the care, maybe, because I don't know what the at home care would even be. What does that look like?
Yeah.
You know, but like just maybe that people believe them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Did your parents throw away your stuff when you were gone, or throw away
Yeah,
any?
everything was, yeah, absolutely. Everything was in boxes. And like when I went back into my bedroom, it was like all the walls were white again. I didn't have, it was kind of almost like a Dr. Phil moment before Dr. Phil. You know how Dr. Phil, like, take all the sheets, just get rid of everything, blah, blah, blah. It was like that. Like I didn't, and then it was weird because for a while, like, you know, I'd go into the bathroom and the walls would be just so claustrophobic, and I would be singing or I'd ask to go to the bathroom and my mom would be like, why are you asking all these things, you know, like, and I was like, well, basically I'm trained. I don't know, what do you want me to say? You know. um and so it's like, how do you unlearn? And then also, how do you unlearn your name? Did they change your name at all?
No.
Okay.
We were known by our names, but we had to do head counts and stuff like that. But as numbers, but we were known as our names.
And then blindfold or no blindfolds?
For what? I mean, there was one process for graduation where we had to be blindfolded the whole day, and we had to walk around the facility. They'd be like, "Come over here," and they'd like clap, and then we have to follow their fucking clap and like follow them.
Shit.
So yeah, it was like it was a really weird fucking process we had to do to graduate. But that's the only time we were blindfolded. But we had to stand in lines in formation and walk in sync, and we had to do these gap checks where you had to like touch the person's back in front of you if you got too far apart.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, wow. And that's crazy too, because, you know, if you're like working with somebody's aura as opposed to where their physical body is, it's like, oh, you know, like you say, where are you?
Yeah.
I was in Utah recently and passed by the old building for the Cross Creek Academy. And it is wicked. It like still has the different, I mean, it's a different facility now. It's a different business now, but like it just gives off this, oh, it just, and there's so many windows and so many rooms. And it was, I got out of the car, we were getting some food in part of the other building, and I was like, oh my gosh, where am I at? And then I like started you know, checking out the the like address, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this was the former, like, this is so crazy. So I don't know. I don't know.
Did anybody try running when you were
Oh
there?
yeah. Oh yes. And as a matter of fact, some kids, they stole from another car and then they tried to run because there was like, we were on the BLM land and we did have a nice big road at certain parts that we were on. When we were in hand carts, we were closer to the road because we had to do it along the road. And there were some times where the kids would try to run away because they thought that they were closer. and they basically would look at the electricity lines, and they're like, oh, well, we just need to follow those, but they're not like going in the right direction that you would be going back to town, you know?
Yeah.
So it's crazy because it's like you're really far out there, and they'll catch you. They know it's like their backyard for staff, you know? That's their job, to find you and get you and bring you back. And sometimes, you know, they would have to handcuff the boys together, ankle to wrist during the night, or just really hike them around more severe, like handcuffed to each other so that they wouldn't run away. So you were not encouraged to run away. Like,
Okay.
and I wasn't going anywhere because my shoes barely fit. Like, I was like, I'm fine.
Did you notice staff playing any favorites? Did they have their favorite students?
I would say they did, but I wouldn't say that it was ever like overly whatnot, you know. I mean, I guess everybody kind of has their favorites. Like you would have your own favorites with staff too, huh? But then at what point is that maybe Stockholm syndrome where you're like, oh, I'm in love with these people, they're great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, of course, for survival, you want to be in their favor. So you do want to do, you know, what can I do? You know, can I go get more firewood? Can I dig the trench for the fire pit? Like, what does that look like? You know, so yeah, you're constantly on alert, wondering, like you say, what's the right thing to do? How do you get into favor? How do you do that? And some of them you almost couldn't tell, you know. There were a few of them that were getting ready for their Mormon mission, and so they were very sweet. They would literally just read their Book of Mormon and just spend a lot of time I don't know if that's the right word, but so then that's where I was like, well, don't we get to read anything? And they were like, only the Book of Mormon, or like my mom sent a Bible. But I'm like, why then? You know, which I'm like, I didn't know that religion, but why wasn't mine still okay? So even that was another question too. Who gets to say then that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, another conversation, huh? It's a real weird, you know, rabbit's tunnel, Pandora's box going down all this stuff because there's so much to it.
Yeah, for sure. What would so they would just bring them back? Would they like beat them up if they ran or anything like that?
I never saw them hitting or beating like that. It was more like hiking more, probably less food, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Okay. And
fear, you know, fear.
Yeah. Did you notice any grooming from the staff to the students, any of that kind of stuff? Or like sexual advances or anything like that? Any weirdo shit like that happen?
I think that I never encountered that because it was so severe what was going on in my own home that it was like not, it wouldn't have been my awareness as something bad because I never understood, because I was so groomed at home from that person. You know what I mean? I'm like, what do you mean you're not supposed to do that? So it really took me a really long time. Could it have happened? I've heard some people say that, but I was never privy to that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
thank God.
Yeah. Did you hear about or know about anybody disappearing from the places you went?
No, but I kind of often wonder that because, like we say, you know, if there's human trafficking, if parents are giving up their kids, who knows what's what, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not being weird, but sometimes I'm like, hey, wait a second. That's like to just anybody. Well, but I mean, yeah, because who's going to believe you? Somebody just came in my house and took my kid. Like,
especially somebody that went there through a place like DHS or like a you know, places that, you know, fuck, the word is escaping me. Like when you're not adopted, like the homes that you stay in, like places Yeah, foster care, like especially if you're a kid from foster care or some system like that, and you get sent there, there's like a track there, like people know about you, but you don't have like parents that are going to come
Right.
looking for you. You don't have
Right.
any of that. So if like the DHS or foster care is involved and they know about this and they're complicit and they don't care what happens to the kid, then they can come up disappeared or missing or whatever, and nobody would ever think twice or bat a fucking eyelash, because they
Right.
don't have people to advocate for them and be like, where the
Right.
hell's my fucking kid? You know what I
Right.
mean? So
No,
that's
right.
why I don't doubt that it happens. And that's why I'm started to ask people that, because
But then
I,
on
I
the flip
guarantee it's
side,
happening.
you're totally onto something. Like that is, you're onto something. But I feel like it's on that flip side where it's like your friends and your immediate other family members that are like, where the did they go?
Yeah.
Where are these kids at? Wait, where did they go? Why aren't they mailing us? Why can't we talk to them on the phone? Where did they go?
Yeah.
Because I know when I got kidnapped the second time, my friends were like, oh, she had you sent away again, huh? And you know what I mean? And it wasn't until like I came home the later that they were like, we were looking for you. But what do? They're not putting, when a normal person is kidnapped, like you say, disappears, gone, you're going to have police, you're going to have an Amber Alert, you're going to have people looking.
Yeah.
But
Missing.
in this case, the
Yeah.
fact that your parents are paying for it, they know where you're at, and it just keeps piling on with the lies. It's that's where it's the dysfunction, I think, is the hardest part.
Yeah, it's just a super volatile situation that's really, really easy to like spill overboard. It's a really fucking volatile like concoction going on in these places.
Mm-hmm.
Like anything can happen. So okay, so your second time in the program, how long were you there? And did you
Yeah,
graduate?
it was the 63 days, but that one, when I went out there because of Kristen dying, we had to actually go and stay at a foster home. Funny enough that you said that, for almost a week to 10 days ish, maybe a little bit longer. And then we had to go actually see a doctor and get like a clearance that it was okay for us to be out there and hiking. And then they were like, well, you'll know it's the time, it's the night before you have to go to the field because we'll have like a bigger meal. And we did. We had a really nice big meal. And me and one other girl, I can't even remember her name because of the changing in Indian names and stuff. But she had also been through the program before too, and literally hadn't even been home for a month. And her mom was like, go home, go back. Like, you're not welcome home. So I think that that's also another thing, is there's no like telling parents, okay, you have a certain amount of time, or maybe you need to adjust. How do you adjust back to having this person in your house? Because at this point, is this your child anymore? Like you say, if they gave them up, if they're giving us up, who are we to you? So these are
Yeah.
big questions, and I know that it's going to take a lot longer to have a lot of this answered. Um, but I hope with all this and you letting me tell my story, that there is somebody out there that, whether they were kidnapped last night or, 20 whatever years ago, that like you and I at least believe what they went through,
Yeah.
and they don't need to like cover it up anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Um, okay. So what was the hardest part for you being in both of these places, and how did you deal with it when you were there?
Going to the bathroom, literally walking away from everybody and having to go to the bathroom out in the middle of nowhere. And that was really kind of scary, not being weird, but like, yeah, rattlesnakes and other stuff. Like, you don't know what you're gonna run into. And then again, if the staff heard you not singing, you better watch out, because they're gonna think you're running away.
Yeah.
How did I deal? Well, and also they didn't give us toilet paper. It was like they'd give us like 2 squares, and you'd be like, I need toilet paper, like I need to go to the bathroom. And they'd be like, sorry, that's all you get. So it was really very unsanitary, like just all the way across the board. And so how did I deal with that? I don't know. I probably go to the bathroom 50 million times a day. Just because I'm like, yay, a porcelain god.
Okay. Um, If you could go back in a time machine knowing what you know now and not go through either of these places, would you do it, and why?
No, I would not. I would have to, whatever I talked to my higher power before I came here, I know that this was part of the plan. And I know that because there's other things in my life where I had to learn that I'm strong, that I have to be on my own, but then also that, like I mentioned, like I was a search and rescue diver, and that entailed me recovering people that had drowned in either the river or in the aqueducts. And so for me to be able to even like train for that and be able to like work with that, I really had to really struggle and work hard. And I had a lot of people be like, you're young, you're little, you're not strong, you can't do anything rough, or you can get your nails dirty. And so they really put me through the ringer. And if I hadn't have been through Challenger, I would have been like, oh, I don't care. But it was necessary. You know, people, when they cross over in their water and the, you know, aqueducts, all that, like if you don't have that person to give them back to their family, there's no closure. There's no, and I couldn't live without at least trying that, because why give me all this experience, give me all this, you know, whatnot, and not let it go towards something awesome. And then also my kids are awesome, you know, like I like have, and my husband's awesome too, but like it's just been really incredible to see them, to let them know that like no matter what, I kept going back to Utah, I kept getting better. I still constantly go to Utah and like go hike and climb and rappel, and it's my home too. So I still think that the land talks to you and heals you, you know, in ways. And I think that ultimately maybe that's what called my spirit, you know, and that's how things kind of happened. Um, and also like, I don't know, it's just like that was kind of fucking cool. But I was like 13 years old and I hiked over, like, just the minimum was 440 miles. Like, and like, I don't know. Like, I sit back and I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Because
Yeah.
nobody was proud of me when I came home. So it's nice to sit back and be like, oh my gosh. Like, this is what you did. On the flip side, yeah, there's days where I was like, who in the fuck would I even be? What would I be? Where would I be living? Would I even be around? You know?
Yeah.
So it does, like anything else, strength and weakness kind of thing, huh?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened after you got out of the program, and what have you struggled with at the most as a result of being in those places?
I think that the first part was, what did I do when I got out?
Yeah, what happened after the program?
The very first time that I got out, the very first day, I remember waking up and being like, oh my gosh, I'm home. And like, I had to get ready to go to school, like immediately. And it was, so I was starting high school my freshman year, like pretty far into the year. And so CPS called on the phone and they're like, oh my gosh, you're here. And I was like, yeah, you know, and they were like, where have you been? And I was like, oh, I've been in Utah. And they're like, we need to interview you. We need to, like, this case is still open. We've been like looking for you for this past 4 months. And I was like, well, I'm here, like, I'm going to Garces. And then I hung up the phone. And then they were like, so my mom was like, who was that? And I was like, oh, it was just CPS. And she said, and I quote, if you say anything to them, you will be on the next plane back to Utah, period. She was like, I will lose everything if you say anything. And it's like, wow, you know, I didn't realize what an impact. So when they came to my school that day, I had to tell them, like, I'm not allowed to say anything to you. I had to, like, really again learn how to be back in the cycle of constantly lying, you know, unfortunately, you know. And so that was, you know, my mother teaching me that. So I then went from that one school then to another school, and then that's when I went back to the program the second time. Once I came home again, we just were not getting along, and I was like, nope. And then I went to juvenile hall and asked to be, you know, taken out of her custody. So from there, I went to a girls' group home. I ended up graduating from high school. I went off and did various fun little things that are totally inappropriate and fun and all that all at the same time. And I've been an at-home mom for all these years, raising my children, and I couldn't be happier. Like, so there are certain things that it's like, wow, looking back on, am I the at-home mom because it's just so hard to be in society? Yeah, that's a huge part of it. You know, so like you, I like being home. I like staying home. Like my backyard looks like a bunch of different solo spots because it's like, you know, like, this is my backyard. I have like 3 different fire pits out there. Like it's hilarious, you know? But it's because like staying home is where I feel comfortable, unless I'm going to Utah to go play.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what do you think you struggled with the most as a result of these places? Like what stuck with you to this day?
I think them calling me the mass manipulator, the mental health aspect of it, calling me the liar and being like, no, I actually wasn't lying. I mean, and that's what was the funniest thing when the DNA stuff came out. It was like, my mom clearly is lying, And she chose that of her own. Nobody held a gun to her head. Nobody told her to do that. Like, she chose that. Like, it just makes you like almost say, you know, wow. And then I have to realize some people are born with brown eyes, some people are born with green eyes, right? There's certain things that we are born with. And I had to come to the realization that my mom she was just maybe never born with a conscience. You know what I mean? Like it just, and so learning that and learning about myself, I think has been the best struggle and the best reward. Learning that like no matter what, like I can do this because I've been able to do a bow drill fire, you know, and I can do like, and so it does kind of sit back where I'm like, oh, you know, that's the good part that I do want to take away from it. Okay. For sure. Yeah.
And let's see. What do you think would have helped you instead of being sent away when you were younger?
That's a really good question. What do you think would have helped for you?
I think just I wanted my parents to like fight for me because I was raped when I was 7. Nothing ever happened to that. So I always felt like they never believed me, and like I wanted my mom to just grab me and be like just like, I'll protect you, like you're my son, I'm gonna protect you, I don't care what the fuck I have to do, like he's never gonna hurt you again, like I'm gonna make you feel safe. And instead what happened is the police went to his house, asked him, did you do this? Asked his sister, has he ever done this to you? And both answers were no. So you're like, oh, guess he didn't do it.
No, yeah, because he's really attracted to them different than he's attracted to you. I'm really sorry that happened to you, and that is really fucked up, and that should never happen to anybody. And you and I, we do have, you know, like a core energy wound, you know, very similar. And yeah, that's right. Is you know, why yeah. Do we have to be silent or quiet and having those things happen? And it's really unfortunate. And yeah, it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't. And that's one of those things where like you even being able to say like this happened, that you don't have to defend it, or you don't have, you know what I mean? Like it's just, this is your truth, and that's how that was, unfortunately. And that's like, that's fucked up, you know. And that's where, you know, like I said, you know, sometimes the system is a little messed up, you know.
Yeah, so I would say my parents just like, I wanted to feel protected and safe. Like I felt safe with my parents, but I wanted to feel like actually like really safe, and I wanted them to like just hold me in their arms and protect me. And I wanted something, like I guess like long term, I wanted something to fucking happen to him. Like I didn't want him to get away with that shit. I wanted him to admit what the fuck he did and like take accountability for it. And I wanted to feel safe. So that was a big part of it. If my parents had just let me have my phase of just smoking weed and like having just smoking weed, like just let me have the fucking phase instead of, oh, well, he's smoking weed now, he's going to turn into a heroin addict. Like,
which is dumb because
instead of having that mentality, like
you're smoking weed, and I didn't smoke weed until after the programs because I had no fucking idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could have been, like I say, anytime somebody is using medicine or whatever, right? They're doing drugs. You're trying to feel better. You're trying to feel better.
Yeah.
So what's the fucking problem? If that was something that was self-medicating, you're helping yourself feel better. It's because that inner child is there and he's wounded, and holy shit, that's messed up. You know, and like you say, sometimes parents don't know what to do because it's sometimes so like, you know, what did I do as a parent, or how could I have done different, or whatever. And I think that this is the generation now that is barely coming up to understanding, hey, wait a second, some things are happening to kids and we need to like give them a voice and we need to let them feel that they're okay, you know. And that's hard to know who you can even trust in that situation, really.
Yeah, I mean, I was extremely well educated on drugs too. My dad had me watch like Requiem for a Dream when I was like 10 years old. I don't know if you know that movie, but super intense. And he's just like, this is why you don't do drugs. Your arm's gonna get, you're gonna have to cut it off and all this shit. And so my dad was a chemist major too. So he was always like, this is what's in this shit. Like, this is why you don't do it. Like all this stuff. So like, I think had they let me have my weed smoking phase, and just like experimenting with alcohol, I never ended up liking hard alcohol. Like, sure, I got wasted and whatnot, but I had so many bad experiences with hard alcohol that I was just like, this is dumb. So if they had just let me have that weed smoking, experimenting with alcohol, smoking cigarette phase, I don't think I ever would have touched hard drugs. I don't know that for a fact, but I know that going to that Spring Creek and being around a bunch of crackheads and heroin addicts and meth heads, and them telling me if I did, it's fucking amazing. You have to try it. I mean, why the wouldn't you try it? You're locked up in here for 22 months. Your parents did this to you. Go live a little. Try this shit. Like, so when I got out of the program, I got straight into hard drugs. So I think like just letting me have that phase, me feeling protected by my parents, and just like family counseling, like doing stuff as a family, like not sending me away. Like sending me away is the worst possible thing they could have done at that point in my life. So I think those three things would have helped me a lot personally.
Well, because and also think about that, right? If you're like you mentioned the adoption stuff, right? If you already have that like abandonment feel, and then they're like, here, we're gonna abandon you. Like you say, like you taking care of yourself right now, knowing who you are, all that, being the dad you need to be to yourself, and really being the mom that you need to yourself. That's you getting back up in the morning, like you say, when you don't want to, making sure you're still dedicated to getting everything done. So I love that about you, because it's like you've taken this really yucky, hurt place, and you're really, like I said, you're really making this movement for that. And like, especially being a kid that's had that happen, like that is so scary, to be in that vulnerable position and say this happened, and like you say, and it's not like, no way, they wouldn't do that. Yes, they fucking would. Yes, they fucking would, and they fucking did. So now what?
Yeah, they're still doing it. They're still doing it. So
yeah,
for sure. So what do you think would have helped you?
I really, really honestly absolutely loved the girls group home that I was at in, it was like Pleasant Hill, Concord, San Francisco area. And it was a husband and his wife, and they were there. It was like 20 of us girls, and they were literally the salt of the earth. They loved me. They made sure that I had the proper schooling and got a high school education. They took us to like AA and NA meetings so that we could understand maybe a little bit more of alcoholism or working steps on ourselves or sponsors. They taught us things like responsibility, like, hey, clean your room, vacuum, do your laundry, and we're going to give you an allowance. And now you have to take care of your money that's your allowance. They made sure that I had actually looked in the Mills College in Berkeley in order to continue my education. I couldn't be more grateful for them, and they were literally just so sweet. It was like, where did they come from and how did they do that? And I don't know. So I think that that was ultimately the perfect thing for me, to be away from my mom, to be living communally with these other girls. Some of them were actual bitches, some of them like really taught you, hey, some people are just not fucking nice. And that means sometimes I don't need to be nice too. So we've had our high school reunions from there. Like a bunch of us girls still connect again on Facebook. What a fucking awesome thing. And so I think ultimately that was it, was finding a community. And also they had like a therapist there. So like you say about aftercare, it's like I at least got to see a therapist that wasn't like, if you say something is going to be used against you. It was like, no, spill the beans. What are we working with here? Let's throw it all on the table and let's figure it out. And they love that. Yeah.
Okay. And have you ever tried talking to your mom about what happened to you in the program and how it affected you? Have you ever tried to talk to your parents?
I definitely talked to my mom about it, and I don't think that, as I read her letters, as an adult, I don't think that she was even in a place herself where she even herself had any support. And so, as much as I like like I say, some days I'm like, I can't believe you did this. And then other days I'm like, woo, so it really just depends on the mood, maybe personality too. But again, I haven't talked to her in many, many, many years. And a lot of that is why the fuck did you do that to me? Like, why wasn't I worth, like you say, no, you should have been my mom and said what this person is doing to me is absolutely against the law, morally, like all that, and I'm going to take care of my child. And it is something that you live with, because you're like, man, everybody needs to make choices, And so with me, I kind of see like where it was difficult for her and her choices, and like I wasn't always nice, not saying like I was perfect, but then I realized like I was dealing, now I understand what I was dealing with. Kind of like, and so that's okay, wait, actually I was being really nice. Actually, you taught me to be like that to you,
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want people to know about your experience, or anything that you might tell a parent thinking about sending their kid to a place like this?
I think if you're a parent and you're considering sending your kid to a place like this, I think you need to look them in the face and wonder, is this worth like maybe never seeing my kid ever again alive, number one. And you're expecting them to like go through something that if you yourself haven't even been camping or been hiking, even on a mile hike, that is a lot to ask of somebody in the name of just like, hey, discipline, I guess. So I would like you to do your research, look through videos, see what's happened and why we are called survivors. Like there's a reason for that. And I hope that number does not continue to grow. And don't just listen to the programs. Listen to the kids that have survived. Listen to all of these podcasts that talk about us in all different walks, because it's called the troubled teen industry for a reason. It blankets a lot of this. And like you say, it's not policed. It's not, there's no anything saying this is the template, because it's also over, like you say, not only just state lines, but didn't you say Jamaica they were going to send you to? Or, I mean, outside. So like, come on. There's some kids that were put on boats and just, it's horrible. It's horrible. So I wish that Congress would kind of lock it down a little bit more and be like, hey, why are we giving these permits out to these companies? Why are we letting this happen to the kids? I did at one point, I will leave it at this. I did at one point call the BLM in Utah to ask if we could have a specific marker for Kristen Chase, that she had been there, that it had been where, you know what I mean? And they're like, okay, wait a second, think about it. Where would we put it? Number one, how do we know how busy that's going to be? Now we need to put bathrooms out there. And then it was like, and then where do we stop? Because she's not necessarily the first. She was just the first from my program, Challenger, and they're like, the whole desert could end up looking like a cemetery from markers from these survivors. So again, yeah, survivors, because some kids do not make it back home.
Yeah, for sure. And
actually, all of us don't make it back home, because the people that come back home are not, come to think of it.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
so much. I
Yeah.
really appreciate this, that you gave me the time to, really answer a lot of these hard questions. Ugh, not easy.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for being brave enough to coming on the show. And if you guys have watched the videos so far, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment down below. I'd love to say hello, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace out, guys.